This was a respectful meeting and a substantive meeting.
He wouldn't tell us what Donald Trump said, but Bill de Blasio, once described by Trump as the worst mayor in America, wasn't shy about what he said to the president-elect.
I told him what I believed, and I told him what I was hearing from my fellow New Yorkers.
The mayor said what he's hearing, concern that Wall Street and the wealthy will get big tax breaks, fears that stop and frisk might come back, and worries from immigrants their loved ones will be deported. De Blasio said his goal, educating Trump.
For him to know that we have 900 Muslim American NYPD members. Those were important facts. That's not lecturing. That's giving perspective.
Team Trump didn't characterize the meeting with de Blasio.
The ball's in his court. People in this city and all over the country are looking to see what he's going to do. I thought it was important he heard the people's perspective.
A Trump spokeswoman said today's focus was filling the Supreme Court vacancy, something the pro-life Federalist Society endorses.
I think he wants to move forward as swiftly as he can to make sure that the court's full 9-member bench is restored.
The president-elect also released a list of foreign leaders that he and Vice President-elect Pence have spoken to, perhaps to rebut critics who've said the transition has been rocky. In Washington, after a lunch meeting between the Biden and Pence families, the vice president said a bumpy start is to be expected.
No administration is ready on day one. We weren't ready on day one. I've never met one that's ever been ready on day one. But I'm confident on day one, everything will be in good hands.
Some parents who live in this very area were telling me tonight, point blank, they think twice before coming outside, walking their kids down this particular sidewalk because of incidents we saw right here.
We can't even come outside and let our kids come outside because we're scared.
It's not a random act of violence. It's clearly an argument that escalated to an unfortunate death.
According to Boston Police Commissioner William Evans, one man involved in that argument was found dead by the doorway of this home, surrounded by red tape. The other man was taken in for questioning. Neighbors like Lisa, meanwhile, questioned why the fight turned fatal.
I don't know why people are deciding to kill instead of talking and resolving it another way.
Police still trying to solve exactly what happened here tonight.
Thomas Gallagher, the engineer of this NJ Transit train, told investigators that he remembered approaching the terminal platform, that he was moving at 10 miles per hour. And then the next thing he remembered, he was on the floor of the cab after the train had crashed into Hoboken station, killing a young mother. Now, his lawyer says he suffers from undiagnosed sleep apnea.
You can lose consciousness.
Dr. Charles Seisler heads the Sleep Health Institute in Boston and says 20 to 25% of truck, bus, and train operators have sleep apnea.
Their brain seizes control and makes an involuntary transition from wakefulness to sleep. So 1 second they're paying attention and they're focusing on their job, and the next second they can be essentially unconscious.
According to Gallagher's lawyer, NJ Transit gave him a physical exam in July of this year and cleared him for duty. That Gallagher is extremely heavy and has a large neck circumference, and that after the accident, Gallagher was diagnosed with severe obstructive sleep apnea. Dr. Seisler says Gallagher should have been recommended for additional screening, even though there are no laws mandating it.
The employers, as well as the federal government, should require mandatory diagnostic testing.
NJ Transit will only say that they have a sleep apnea screening program, but can't discuss what happened with Gallagher. Metro-North began a pilot program for sleep apnea in 2015 after the crash in Spuyten-Duyvil that killed 4 and injured more than 70. The engineer responsible, William Rockefeller, also had a case of undiagnosed sleep apnea.
Hands together, hearts together. A community is coming together after this hate crime.
It is not new. It is not because a new president was elected. This has been going on for years, and the community, the country, our nation needs to wake up. Racism is here.
This word was painted right outside of a daycare and playground.
What are we teaching our children?
Frida Gandy is the executive director at the MLK Center.
We just want to be here for families. That's it. We didn't ask for this. Our kids didn't ask for this.
Our kids didn't ask for this. Our kids didn't ask for this. Our kids didn't ask for this. Our kids didn't ask for this. Our kids didn't ask for this. Our kids didn't ask for this. Our kids didn't ask for this. Our kids didn't ask for this. Our kids didn't ask for this. Our kids didn't ask for this. Our kids didn't ask for this. Our kids didn't ask for this. Our kids didn't ask for this. Our kids didn't ask for this. Our kids didn't ask for this. Our kids didn't ask for this. Our kids didn't ask for this. Our kids didn't ask for this. Our kids didn't ask for this. Our kids didn't ask for this. Our kids didn't ask for this. Our kids didn't ask for this. Our kids didn't ask for this. Our kids didn't ask for this. Our kids didn't ask for this. Our kids didn't ask for this. Our kids didn't ask for this. Our kids d She's had to calm down and keep the kids sheltered from those awful slurs.
This is a place where they feel safe, and they should feel safe.
But for how much hate this shows, this group has vowed that with each stroke, each brush, they'll show good will overcome.
The hate that you have attempted to unleash on this organization and this community will not be tolerated by us. We stand against it now, and we can stop it before it continues to spread.
Suffolk police say they're just not sure why 3 armed men chose a specific home here in Santa Moriches to storm into and rob last night. The suspects are now all in custody, but this home invasion incident has shaken some in this community.
No one answered the door at the home today, but police say a family of 6 was inside Wednesday night when 3 men armed with a handgun and baseball bats entered through an unlocked garage door.
They got 4 kids over there. They must have been scared to death.
None of those kids that neighbor Carolyn Gregory was worried about were injured, but police say their mom and dad were tied up. The suspects got away with cash, jewelry, and cell phones.
A description of the suspects was broadcast over the police radio, and 3rd Precinct officers arrested the 3 men.
The men were captured, police say, about an hour later and about 40 miles away in Bayshore. 2 are from Brooklyn. The 3rd is said to be homeless.
If it wasn't targeted, I just was surprised they would pick that house out of every house. In my opinion, it must have been targeted.
Neighbor Mike Delapizzi describes the victims as a hard-working couple who both own their own businesses. But again, police aren't saying if the suspects knew that.
I just hope that, it's not the beginning of something bad. You know what I mean? Like the case in the neighborhood.
Investigators may have used one of the stolen cell phones to help track the suspects, but Suffolk police won't confirm that.
I'm a heart patient. It's about to give me a heart attack.
90-year-old Robert Carter couldn't seem to convince MLGNW he is alive. I did a story in January about the letter Carter got indicating he was dead. Carter, who actually worked for MLGNW for almost 40 years, tried to convince the utility he was not dead. We did a story in January and talked with the utility about the problem.
They sent me another letter apologizing and said it had all been straightened out.
Then, 2 weeks ago, a utility worker showed up saying his utilities would be turned off. Carter's bill was current. He showed him his driver's license.
And he said, well, I'll take care of it.
And then this happened around noon.
All of a sudden, I was sitting there about 12:15, and my lights went off.
Carter was told he had to prove to the utility he was alive to make sure he was the one living in his house, the one he has lived in for more than 40 years. We followed him to the MLGNW office downtown. I walked with him into the building to make sure he ended up where he needed to. So what happened?
There was an error. Yeah. It should not have happened. It should have been corrected back in January. It was an error. His services are on. We are very, very sorry for what has happened to Mr. Carter.
Robert Carter wonders.
If they treat an ex-employee like this, what do they treat the general public?